Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving deep into something you guys requested. The secrets to a happy, lasting marriage. And let me tell you, the source material we found, it really shakes things up.
It really does. We're constantly bombarded with this idea of finding the one, that perfect person who completes us. This source throws that out the window right away.
It does. It kind of throws you for a loop at first. Like, wait, maybe it's not about finding someone else at all, but more about, I don't know, finding yourself first.
You hit the nail on the head. This source is all about self-love. And I'm not talking about like bubble baths and face masks. Those are nice too. It's about recognizing that expecting your partner to be your sole source of happiness, that's a recipe for disaster.
So it's not wrong to want your partner to make you happy. It's more about where that desire is coming from.
Right.
Like this source seems to be saying we need to be pretty content on our own first.
Exactly. Imagine constantly needing someone else to fill a void within you. No one, no matter how amazing, can handle that long term. And this source argues that's where the disappointment creeps in, the resentment, that feeling that something's off even when things look picture perfect from the outside.
It's like that saying you can't pour from an empty cup, right? Can't give what you don't have yourself. And this source actually uses this phrase, marry yourself first.
I gotta admit, I kind of rolled my eyes when I first read that. Like, okay, a little cliche, no. But what does that even look like in real life? I think it's about recognizing you're worthy of love and happiness just as you are right now. Committing to your own growth, chasing those passions, feeling good in your own skin, that's mirroring yourself. It's quieting that voice saying you need someone else to complete you because you've already embraced your own wholeness.
It's like Oprah said, you don't complete me, and I don't complete you, because we are all complete just as we are. That shifts things, doesn't it, from needing to choosing.
Absolutely. Imagine coming into a relationship already feeling whole. You're not desperately clinging to someone to fix you. Instead, you're looking for someone who complements your already fulfilling life, someone to share that journey with. Respect, supporting each other's dreams, appreciating those differences. That becomes the focus.
And that ties into this quote from the source material by Joe Dispenza that really stuck with me. He said, when you are truly whole and you love yourself, you begin to attract experiences in your life that reflect that wholeness. A lot of people hear that and think, okay, sounds nice, but how do I actually attract wholeness?
If we look closely at what Dispenza is suggesting, it becomes clear that our internal state is reflected in our external experiences. If we are constantly seeking external validation and looking for someone to complete us, we will likely end up in relationships that reinforce those beliefs. On the other hand, cultivating self-love, with the security and confidence that comes with it, we attract relationships that mirror that self-respect.
So it's not about some mystical manifestation. It's about the energy we project based on how we see ourselves. Fascinating stuff. But we've tossed this idea of self-love around a lot. How does that translate to the day-to-day of a relationship, when conflict inevitably arises?
That's where the rubber meets the road. And this source is clear. It's not about trying to change your partner. It's about looking inward at your own growth, your reactions.
But wouldn't that lead to just accepting bad behavior? Like, if it's all on us to fix, where do we draw the line?
That's a really important point. This isn't about accepting mistreatment or lowering our standards. It's about understanding we only control ourselves, looking inward and asking, okay, what's my part in this? What can I learn? This source suggests that self-reflection is how we lay the groundwork for healthier relationships.
So in a way, working on ourselves, becoming more self-aware and secure, actually raises our standards. We don't settle because we recognize our worth.
Exactly. When you know your value, you set boundaries, you attract partners who vibe with that energy. It's not about frantically searching to fill a void, but recognizing those who embody the qualities you value.
This is making me rethink a lot of things.
Yeah.
We've established self-love is key. But what about just the day-to-day of being in a relationship, those bumps in the road?
Well, this source encourages us to see marriage not as a finish line, but as a shared journey. It uses this analogy of two people traveling side by side, each in their own lane, offering support. You're not trying to merge into one lane or force the other person into yours.
Makes sense. We're so hung up on the happily ever after. We forget relationships are always evolving. It's not about becoming clones of each other, right?
Exactly. And that's where the work part of work in progress comes in, which this source doesn't shy away from at all.
Definitely sounds like there's a lot to unpack there. And we've only scratched the surface. Let's take a pause here and come back to dig deeper into this idea of marriage as a shared journey in our next segment.
One thing that really stood out to me in the source was how much emphasis it puts on communication. And I'm not talking about just, pick up the groceries or what are we doing this weekend?
Right, not just logistics. It's deeper than that.
Exactly. This source is all about really listening to understand, not just waiting for your turn to talk, validating your partner's feelings, even if you don't see eye to eye, and making that space for really open, honest conversations.
Which I imagine is even more important when disagreements come up, because this source definitely doesn't pretend conflict doesn't exist. It almost seems to embrace it, but not in a, dramatic blow-up-your-life kind of way.
Right. It's more like seeing disagreements as a chance to learn and grow closer. It challenges us to approach those conflicts not blaming each other, but with curiosity. Instead of pointing fingers, it's like, okay, what's my role in this? What can I learn here? How can I express my needs and feelings in a way that actually helps?
So it's taking responsibility for our own actions and reactions rather than trying to control or change our partner, which, let's be real, that's easier said than done, right? Especially in the heat of the moment. Any suggestions from the source on how to handle those tougher conversations?
Self-awareness is huge. This source hammers that point home. It's about knowing your own triggers, those insecurities, the things that tend to set you off. The more we understand those patterns in ourselves, the better we can navigate disagreements without going straight to blame or getting defensive.
It's almost like our partners sometimes reflect back those things we might not want to see in ourselves. Tough to face. But maybe that's where the growth happens, both individually and as a couple.
Exactly. And when we learn to show up with more self-awareness and compassion for ourselves and our partners, it builds a stronger foundation. It's not about avoiding conflict altogether, but getting better at moving through it in a way that strengthens the bond instead of chipping away at it.
That makes me think about this source's analogy of marriage as this journey, with each person walking side by side offering support. What happens when one person's path takes a detour? Like life happens, career changes, family stuff, personal challenges, and those things impact both people.
That's where the support part of that analogy is so important, and this source really digs into what that means. Showing empathy, even when you don't fully get where your partner's coming from or agree with their choices, recognizing that growth and change are going to happen, and sometimes those paths might go in different directions for a while.
It makes you realize that getting through those detours, those moments where you're in uncharted territory as a couple, it takes a lot of trust in each other and in the foundation you've built.
It really does. Trust is essential in any relationship, especially during times of transition or uncertainty. It's about being there for your partner's experiences without judgment, believing in their good intentions, even when their choices might not make sense to you.
This makes me think about the importance of vulnerability in relationships. Because those difficult conversations, the ones where we have to dig deep and be honest about our fears and insecurities, those can bring us closer, even if they're tough in the moment.
You're totally right. This source talks about how vulnerability isn't about oversharing or dumping all your deepest secrets right away. It's about creating a space where both people feel safe to be seen, heard, and understood, imperfections and all. It's in those moments of vulnerability that real intimacy grows.
It's like Brené Brown said, vulnerability is not weakness, it's our greatest measure of courage. It takes guts to be authentic with our partners, to let our guard down and just be ourselves.
It does, and it's in those moments of shared vulnerability, where both partners feel safe to be their true selves, that relationships truly come alive. It's about recognizing that intimacy and connection often exist on the other side of those uncomfortable feelings.
So we've talked a lot about the internal work of a relationship. But this source also gives some practical advice for keeping that spark alive, right?
Yeah. It stresses how important quality time together is. And no, I don't mean vegging out on the couch, scrolling on your phones.
Definitely not. What does that look like, according to this source?
Making time for activities you both enjoy. Trying a new restaurant, taking a weekend trip, or even just putting the phones away for 30 minutes each night to really connect. It's those consistent, everyday efforts that make a difference in the long run.
It sounds like it's about being intentional, carving out time for each other, even when life gets crazy, showing your partner you care, even in those small, consistent ways.
Exactly. Being mindful and present in those little moments. But this source also acknowledges that even with the best intentions, sometimes relationships need a little extra help.
You're talking about seeking outside help, like therapy.
Exactly. And this source emphasizes that there's zero shame in talking to a therapist, especially when communication keeps breaking down or you're dealing with really complex issues.
It's like having a coach in your corner, someone who can offer a fresh perspective, teach you new ways to communicate and handle conflict, and help you strengthen your bond.
Perfect analogy. It's recognizing that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Sometimes that objective third party can make a world of difference.
So much good stuff here. It's obvious that building a healthy, strong relationship takes effort, being intentional, and a willingness to grow both individually and together. And while this source has been amazing, I feel like there's even more to unpack. Let's take a quick break and come back to wrap up this deep dive with some final thoughts. Going through all this, the thing that really struck me is how this source redefines happily ever after. It's not about reaching this perfect state of bliss where there's never any disagreements or challenges.
Yeah, it throws that fairy tale idea out the window. This source is all about being real. It's like disagreements are going to happen, challenges are part of the deal. It's how you approach them that makes or breaks a relationship.
So it's a choice we make every day, even in the little moments, to show up for our partner and for the relationship. Choosing understanding over judgment, connection over shutting down, love over ego, even when it's tough.
Exactly. And that takes all those skills we've been talking about, communicating openly and honestly, really listening with empathy, seeing conflict as a chance to grow closer instead of a battle to be won.
It really challenges that whole two halves make a whole thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This source seems to be saying it's more about two whole, complete people choosing to walk alongside each other.
Yeah, it's about recognizing and appreciating each other's individuality while still building a life together. And that takes being willing to create that space where you can both say what you need, be vulnerable with each other, embrace the fact that you're both growing and changing, and support each other through all that.
It's funny, so much of what we talked about today, self-love, empathy, really communicating those are important for any kind of relationship, not just romantic ones.
Totally. Whether it's your partner, family, friends, even coworkers, those things are fundamental to connecting with other people in a way that's genuine.
It always seems to come back to self-love, doesn't it? That's like the foundation.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, how can people listening start cultivating more of that in their own lives, relationship or no relationship?
I think it starts with paying attention to how you talk to yourself. Are you being kind to yourself, compassionate? Or are you always criticizing, judging?
Like we were saying before, you can't pour from an empty cup. Got to fill yourself up first.
Exactly. And what fills you up might be different from what fills up someone else. Maybe it's spending time doing something you love, getting out in nature, being around people you care about. It could be as simple as practicing gratitude, giving yourself permission to rest when you need it. The important thing is to figure out what truly nourishes you, mind, body, and soul, and then make those things a priority.
Such a good reminder. We covered a lot today. We challenged those fairy tale ideas about love, talk about why self-love is so important for a happy and healthy relationship, even got into some practical tips. Huge thank you to everyone listening for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been great exploring all this with you.
And remember, everyone, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. Until next time, stay curious, keep those hearts open, and know that you are worthy of love and happiness just as you are.